everybody. So I'm really excited. We are here to talk about Thor Ragnarok, and this is very exciting. And my friend Trevor is here to talk about it. And I want to say hi.
Hi, how you going, everyone?
Yeah, so he's from all the way from Australia, and he has Twitter, How to Love Comics. You definitely want to check out, and we've been able to do all of the comic book movies since Doctor Strange together, talk about them, except for Logan, I guess.
Yeah, that's the only one we didn't do,
Yeah. So this is pretty exciting. So I want to talk a little bit about Thor through the years as far as a character. Obviously, he originated in Norse lore. But how has he been used over the years as a Marvel character, and who decided to take this character and make them a comic book character?
Sure. So Thor, I think, originated in comics at least in 1962, 63, around that sort of early 60s. Similar time when Spider-Man and Iron Man and all those characters are popping up. So he's sort of part of that big original batch. And he started in a comic called Journey into Mystery, which at the time was doing very much sort of horror / sort of fantasy kind of short stories kind of thing. And they decided just to do a 13-page, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby decided to do a 13-page story based on a new hero in Thor based off Norse mythology. So the story goes, it's Donald Blake, who's a doctor with a walking stick, is visiting Norway, and he hears rumors that there might be an alien invasion happening. So he goes up to the hills to check it out and comes across this a really old walking stick. He picks it up and he becomes Thor, the god of thunder. In a couple pages of him just playing around with his hammer and sort of learning it's a good exposition dump of the ways that about Thor and how he can do it with his powers. And in the end, he ends up saving Earth by beating the aliens, and it's all done in about 13 pages. So it's very economical in terms of storytelling as well.
So he's not Odin's son in the original.
So what they happen to do afterwards is that, similar in the first movie, Thor was sent to Earth to learn sort of humility.
Mm-hmm.
But he could only appear on Earth when he tapped the walking stick, and he became Thor. Eventually, they did remove the Donald Blake aspect, and it was just Thor 24/7, and he'd come and go from Asgard as he pleased. But that was sort of after about 20 years, and then from then onwards, it's always been pretty much Thor, and didn't have to worry about Donald Blake as the secret identity, kind of the Clark Kent, you could almost say, of Thor.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Huh. And when did Loki come into play as far as was he always his rival? Was he always how?
Yeah, so it was very early on, actually. It was sort of like 2 issues later. So I think sort of Journey into Mystery. So Thor appeared in Journey into Mystery 83. Loki appeared in issue 85. So it was very early on. And then he obviously appeared quite regularly. Certain runs more than creative runs more than others, where he'd often have a very ongoing subplots. Getting up the mischief, sometimes occasionally being a hero, occasionally being a villain, but very much always up the mischief.
Was it always something that had sort of a sense of humor, or were they pretty serious at first?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty serious. Not like mega serious. It's still quite fun, but it's not like a comedy. There's not like really jokes or anything like that. It's just big ideas, crazy things happening. But I wouldn't say there's gags.
So that's pretty new.
Yeah, I mean, certain writers might have added the occasional joke in there, but it's not like
Doctor Strange.
Like Doctor Strange, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And when did he become a member of the Avengers? Was he always in the Avengers, or?
Yeah, so he was part of the original lineup of the Avengers. who they faced Loki in the first issue.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the Avengers movie took a lot of that as well, from that very first issue. So yeah, he's an original member, and he's sort of come and gone as he pleased. I guess sometimes he's got more pressing the things to do in Asgard, and so he hasn't always been in the lineup, but he's one of the originals.
Mm. And have they introduced most of the sort of Thor characters at this point, or they're still, because there are a lot of characters in compared to some of the others that don't have, that are more limited. But now we've got Hela and the Three Warriors, and I don't know. There's just a lot.
Yeah, so he's always had a very extended cast of sort of secondary characters. I guess when you sort of introduce like different locations and people are involved in that, it's often when it builds up. You pick up a lot of characters, and I guess when the character's been around for 50 years, you sort of accumulate a lot of characters too. But yeah, I reckon they have introduced probably 90% of the core characters that you'd see in the cast, like the Warriors 3 and like Loki and Odin and Sif.
And the Valkyrie, is that part of the comic lore?
Yeah. So Valkyrie originally, she was appeared in the Avengers as a sort of a villain / hero. She was meant to be a parody of second wave feminism, and in sort of 1970. But obviously the character became more after that, and sort of it was used a lot in the 70s and sort of died off a bit, and it's come back, and it's one of those things. It just it depends on who's writing the characters, and if they like the character or not, they often bring them back, and then yeah,
interesting. Okay, cool. And Hela, is that a pretty big Thor villain?
Yeah, and especially certain runs, she's been the very core ongoing villain, where a lot of sort of plot threads have gone back and forth with her, especially sort of the Walt Simonson run, which is a classic run from the 1980s, sort of about 60 or so issues of like really fantastic comics. It's sort of up there with all the, when people say, oh, what's the greatest runs of sort of superhero comics, it is always up there with like the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby Fantastic Four and all those sort of classic runs. It's always up there.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, so what do you think of the first two Thor movies? Start with the first.
With the first? Yeah, I really enjoyed the first one. It sort of hit the right notes and introduced a lot of ideas and characters. Asgard looked fantastic, and it sort of created that a fantastic world around it, and there's always world building. So I really enjoyed it, and they thrown in some humor as well, which was fun, and yeah, and the characters were pretty good. And I enjoyed like the way that Chris Hemsworth was like Thor, and sort of that arrogant kind of Thor, which I quite like, because then it gives that sense of character development as he matures throughout. And the second one, I've only ever seen it once at the cinemas, and I didn't really enjoy it. It was pretty flat, I found.
Yeah.
I feel like they didn't really have an idea. They just needed to do a sequel, and it just became a bit of a flat movie, in my opinion.
Yeah. So for me, I actually really like the first one a lot. I mean, I love Thor and Loki. I love them so much. I love Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth. They're so pretty and they're so great, and I just love them. I really think I could watch them reading the phone book and I would be entertained. I just like them so much together. And I really thought, because I'm very hit and miss when it comes to fantasy, but I just thought there was enough humor. It wasn't so plotting like a lot of fantasy is for me. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed that first one. I thought it was beautiful. And I mean, the big flaw with that first one is too much time spent on Earth. And Jane should not be the protagonist in the movie. And she's just kind of flat but man, he's just so charming. Even those human scenes, I love him so much. So I really like that first one. And the second one, all the stuff with the villain, bleh. But I love all the stuff with Thor and Loki. So I really I like half of it, I guess, quite a
Yeah.
bit. So there you go. But so then coming to this one, I love the director Taika Waititi. Have you seen any of his movies?
Yeah, I've seen The Hunt for the Wilder People and What We Do in the Shadows, and he's done some Fly in the Conchords as well.
Mm-hmm. So do you like those?
I really enjoyed those. Yeah, it's really funny, sort of clever humor, and I guess it's that New Zealand sense of humor as well. Sort of is it falls within the Venn diagram of the Australian humor quite a lot as well.
Yeah, and I thought what we did, Hunt for the Wilder People was actually really touching and very sweet. And I mean, adoption is a message, and foster care and stuff is something I really hold dear. And so, I really appreciated it too. It wasn't just like a silly comedy, and it was so beautiful. I mean, the cinematography was amazing in that film. And,
and the New Zealand wilderness is fantastic as well.
Yeah. And did you know that they're making a sequel to What We Did in the Shadows? I just read it, I think, today.
Yeah, I heard about that this morning. Yeah, it was it like werewolves? It's about like W-E, E-R.
Oh dear. Yeah. So that would be awesome. So I was going into this pretty excited. I mean, because I love Thor and Loki, and I knew that they were both going to be in it, and I like Hulk pretty good. And I love the director, so there was really no reason to not be excited about Thor Ragnarok. And so I went and saw it, and I thought it was so funny and so charming, and I was just thoroughly entertained. I don't know. What was your sort of experience with it?
Oh, I really enjoyed it too. Very funny. Luckily, Australia, for some reason, Australia gets the Marvel movies a week before the US.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It seems to be often we get we're always behind the US. I remember back in the 90s as a child, we'd be 6 months behind in some movies, TV shows, sometimes a year. So I was very excited. I ended up seeing on the Wednesday night. So the night before, so it was like a preview night, just, on a whim, went to go and sell it. And I really enjoyed it. Very funny. Sort of very unique sort of tone of voice as well, especially for the Marvel movies, which sometimes can feel like that studio kind of feel, where they've all got to fill in, like fit into a house tone. Right. But no, this one was really enjoyable.
But it wasn't, to me at least. There was kind of, I guess, one slightly raunchy joke, but for the most part, it was pretty clean too. It wasn't like, I was nervous when I heard, it's so funny. It's so funny because I want Marvel to sort of stay family friendly, and I feel like this was.
Yeah,
there's drinking and some stuff, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean it's not sort of over the top, and it's done for laughs more than anything.
Yeah, like I think that it's cleaner in content than Guardians of the Galaxy, either of those movies. Yeah. So I would feel comfortable taking kids to see Thor Ragnarok for sure. It's probably cleaner than even Spider-Man Homecoming, to be honest, as far as content. But yeah, I just thought it was so funny and really, I mean, it's like I was talking to my friend about Justice League. We watched the Justice League trailer, and I'm like, they really make it too complicated. All I need is for to have likable actors that are fun and to enjoy the experience. Like that's really, it's not that complicated. Like, but anyway, with this, all of the actors I thought just had charisma to the tilt.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Everyone was on fire, and
so
even like the
charming.
smaller parts as well. Anthony Hopkins was great, and with the he sort of played two roles because he was sort of he was playing Odin, but it was also playing the fake Odin as well.
Right. That was so funny. Oh my gosh. I love that play. That was hilarious. We should say that this is a spoiler podcast. So if you don't want to be spoiled.
If you haven't seen the movie and you plan to go see it, turn it off right now and rush off and go see the movie. We both liked
it. And you can watch, I have a review on my blog and on my channel you can watch instead that's spoiler free. But that play was so funny.
Yeah, and had Sam Neill in as well.
And Matt Damon.
Oh, Matt Damon, I didn't realize.
Yes, Matt Damon. That was so funny. But I guess that takes Matt Damon out of the MCU.
Yeah.
Cutie Matt. But anyway, and so yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And so one of the things I thought that was so smart, because evidently like a lot of the script was improv, which I didn't feel that way at all. Like sometimes that can really show, but what they did, I thought that was so smart, was they had all of the plugs that tied into the MCU in the first like 15 minutes, and they got it done with, and they were done.
Yeah, and then there was maybe a tiny bit at the end, just a book cap it off. But yeah, it was
a little bit, yeah.
And it didn't feel like shoehorned in too much either. It was so because it has a lot of moving parts. This movie,
yeah,
it is, it takes a lot of influences from different spots and mashes it up in a way, and that it's all gelled. It was just quite interesting, because I was worried that there was going to be sometimes it can feel very junky. It could end up being like Batman versus Superman, in the sense that like that's got a lot of different little bits in it.
Yeah,
and it still end up being pretty frustrating to watch.
Yeah, there can be a whole scene where you're like, why am I watching this? And it's just a piece to the whole puzzle, and it doesn't really make sense. And you kind of have to look at Marvel as a puzzle, as this larger thing sometimes. Because it can be frustrating. But in this case, I just thought it was so smart. Because they basically, coming into it, they had to address what happened to Thor during Ultron, and that he wasn't there for them. They had to address that. They had to address where Hulk had been, because he leaves at the end of Ultron. They had to address, we knew that Doctor Strange would be in it, because we got that in the end credit of his movie. And they had to
also like the Loki ending at the second movie as well. They had to address that too.
Right. And and they did all of that in like 15 minutes. I really liked Doctor Strange in here. I thought he was really charismatic and great. I really enjoyed that, because I like that movie more than most, it seems.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, as we already know, because we discussed it. My partner mentioned like that was the one bit that maybe felt a little tacked on. Like if you took that out of the movie, it could have still been the same movie. You know, it could have the movie could have moved on still, but like it was still funny. There was plenty of good gags in there, and
I mean, they kind of found some other way for them to get to Odin, but it worked. It worked, I thought. And and then the Loki thing, I thought totally worked. That was hilarious. And and all of those tying up things, that was probably the best that I've ever seen Marvel do that. In the least obnoxious way. And then from like the point where they get to Sakaar, it's pretty much done with, and it's a new story, which I really liked. So what do you think of Hela in here?
I really liked the design. They went with very much that Jack Kirby kind of original design, especially with that intricate headdress. And I remember seeing that in the trailer and going, oh my God, that looks fantastic. And it looks fantastic in the movie. It's sort of the way that the whole style, and the way that she even like the way she walked with the attitude. She looked fantastic. She looked fantastic. She played the part well. Cate Blanchett did a very good job, because I remember hearing that Cate Blanchett was cast in this movie. And I was thinking, oh, that seems like a weird choice, because she's a much more serious actress.
Right.
And, but no, it worked really well, and I really enjoyed it. My little bit of comic book fan nitpicking thing was sort of went off in the movie when they sort of announced that, she was the daughter of Odin, because that's never been the thing in the comic. It's
interesting.
It was always alluded. It's never been confirmed, but it's always been alluded to that she was a daughter of Loki from a previous incarnation, because a lot of the Norse gods get reincarnated over and over again over the thousands of years, and she was meant to be a daughter of Loki, but I don't think it's ever been confirmed. It's always ever been hinted to.
Maybe that's just like too complicated to try to kind of explain, and there's Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Last week, I've been thinking about that, and it's a matter of in the comics you can do that because you've got 50 years worth
Right,
of
right.
comics, and it's one of those things that it can be done incrementally added to. Where in a 2 hour movie, you can't really do that.
Mhm.
You gotta establish something quickly, and then move on.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people don't like the kind of villains that Marvel has, but for me, I like old school, kind of all baddie kind of villains. To me, that hella kind of reminded me a little bit of Maleficent,
Oh, yep, yeah,
that kind of style. I like that. I like the Wicked Witch of the West. I like, I don't need all of my villains to be like dark and
business.
conflicted and whatever.
Yeah, she's just evil from the get go. There's no sort of conflict or not like a businessman either. Because there's been
Yeah.
a couple businessmen lately as well.
Yeah, the man with the suit. That's true. I much
So, yeah,
prefer someone like Hela than the evil man in the suit.
yeah. And I guess with Thor, you can't do a man in the suit. It's too
Yeah,
hard.
right. Yeah, that's true. So we'll just talk about some other. The one thing I kind of bummed me out that the Warriors 3 got just like boom, they're done.
Yeah, they got handled pretty quickly. They was like they said like one word and they're dead.
Yeah, I was like, oh, because I really like Zachary Levi, who plays one of them, and it was, oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, watching that, and I was thinking, oh, okay, is that how they're going to get rid of them? And just, it's like obviously they just didn't have room for them, but they wanted to address them.
Yeah, like at least the one I forget his name, the sort of Asian looking character, like
Hogan,
Hogan.
Hogan,
Yeah,
Hogan.
he
Yeah,
got a pretty kick butt little
yeah,
scene where he
yeah.
was
He got a
killed.
bit. Yeah,
So at least was that. But I don't know. It was kind of like, oh.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They were sort of yeah, they must not have had a role for him really. So it was sort of like, yeah, it's one of those things where people go, oh, where are they though? Why aren't they doing anything?
Yeah, I
And it's like,
mean,
well, if they're dead, then you can't really. It's addressed.
yeah, I mean, the other weird thing was Sif was nowhere to be found. The Jamie
Yeah,
Alexander.
apparently she was in. She couldn't make it to. They couldn't fit her in with the filming. She was apparently doing another movie at the
Uh,
same time, so they just decided to forget about her so much.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, why did they bring in this whole nother? It seemed like such a natural fit as far as a relationship to use her. So that's interesting. Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, so it wasn't a matter of they excluded her, just they just couldn't fit her in.
Ah, perfect. Okay. And I liked Heimdall in this.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, man. Idris Elba always does a good job.
just out of the eyes always still weird me out. It
Yeah,
looks so weird. It looks like they have like hepatitis or something. I don't know, but he was pretty cool in this. He steals the sword, and so he controls the bridge, and he gathers all the people. And I kind of like they gave him a little bit more to do. I felt like than in.
yeah, because otherwise he's almost been in the past an authority figure below Odin, but like he
Yeah,
hasn't really done a whole lot after that. But this one he had a bit more of a role to play.
yeah, which I liked, and he's not just sort of standing there by the bridge. And
Yeah,
and so Thor and Loki end up on Sakaar. And so, what did you think of Sakaar?
yeah. I had a preconceived notion in my head because Sakaar is a bit different than in the comics. In
Mm.
the comics, there was very much Hulk ended up there. It's sort of more this warrior kind of planet, lots of different alien cultures, and it's the whole gladiator kind of thing. But then Hulk rises above that and then becomes the king, and then the planet
Oh, really?
explodes. Yeah, planet accidentally gets destroyed, and he comes back and rages a war on Earth kind of deal. This
Oh,
one, this one's I liked in the movie. It still had those bits and pieces, some of that bits and pieces, but then they obviously turned it on its head to be sort of a unique style, and it has like the costumes are really cool, especially with the guards with a very much that Jack Kirby kind of geometric sort of lines on the costumes, the colors and weird headdresses. It's really cool though.
yeah. Yeah, it definitely had sort of an 80s vibe, like a little bit of a labyrinth feel, a little bit of, that kind of thing. But I didn't think it was obnoxiously so. It wasn't like one of those things where it was like, remember this and remember this and remember this, and here's a little Easter egg here. It was its own world and its own, but it definitely had that sort of appeal to it, I think.
Oh, definitely. There was a couple Easter eggs in there. Like, if, for instance, the big building with the faces on it, there was one of a very popular Thor character, which they haven't introduced yet.
Oh.
It's interesting to see that he actually exists in the world, which is Beta Ray Bill, who's an alien who is actually, I can see him right behind you. He's the guy. He's the very first person, apart from Odin, to be able to pick up Thor's hammer.
Oh, in this one?
The one behind your head.
Oh, this one?
That one, yeah.
Oh, yeah. The mighty Thor. Yeah, and that's cool. I didn't know that. But I don't know. It wasn't obnoxiously so. It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. No.
Yeah. And it just had a cool production design. It was a cool place. And you get right into this whole thing with the Grandmaster staging these battles. And he has his champion. And of course, we all know, even just from the trailers, that the champion is Hulk. And I guess I didn't realize that Hulk could stay Hulk for that long.
Yeah, I think there's this certain times where it has happened, especially in the comics. In the Planet Hulk one, it happened because he knew that if he turned back to Banner, Banner would essentially die because he wouldn't be able to survive on that world. So Hulk just decided to stay Hulk as long as possible. Okay.
Because, it's 3 years, I think, right? That he's
2 or 3 years, something like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it was kind of fun because I feel like we have never, even in his own movie, like, he's not Hulk for very long. Like, it was sort of fun to see, like, Hulk in a hot tub and Hulk hanging out and stuff like that. Because usually it's just during a battle.
Yeah, I mean, and I think some of that is because of budget as well. I think the actual Hulk is a very expensive character to generate for a long period of time.
That makes sense. Yeah. So they have their battle. Before that, we get to meet Valkyrie, who I loved. I was a huge fan of hers. I thought she wasn't the warrior woman, which has become very cliched, but she wasn't the damsel in distress either. She was just like this weird, boozy, funny, cool character that I really liked.
Yeah, no, she was really good. She was very funny, sort of. That boozy sort of. It sort of had that New Zealand sort of comedy to it with the whole boozy kind of thing. So it was Tessa Thompson. I don't know what else has she been in.
She was in Creed. If you saw Creed.
Okay. Yeah.
She was the girlfriend in there, and that's the main other spot where I've seen her.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm assuming she's a British actress.
You know what? I'm not sure actually if she's American or British, but yeah, she was great. And I don't know. I want a movie about her. I liked her so much. I mean, I liked everyone in this movie so much. I just was like, of course I love Loki and Thor, and Hulk, and I don't know, but I loved her. She was awesome. She was so fun.
Yeah, she was great. Yeah.
She almost reminded me of like a female Doctor Strange in a way.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it's sort of that sort of self-destructive kind of element to her, and
yeah,
but we're still with some redemption behind her.
Right, and then we also meet this rock creature named Korg, and is that a character from the comics?
Yeah, he's an interesting sort of thing where he has connections between the Hulk and Thor. So it was sort of that nice bit of Venn diagram there. He was in the Planet Hulk stories as one of the members of the Gladiator sort of contestants, and then sort of joins Hulk in his crusade. But then in that story, they revealed that he was actually one of the aliens in the very first Thor story who invaded the Earth. And apparently he was one of those aliens who was beaten by Thor and then skipped out of town.
Oh, because I wondered if, maybe they just used the since they don't have the rights to Fantastic Four, I wondered if, they just created
Like,
this new character. But
yeah,
this is kind
I
of the
guess
same
it's one of
as.
those things. Yeah, so I guess it's a rock alien kind of deal.
Yeah, I guess so. But he was so funny. Oh my gosh, I was laughing. It was hilarious. He was so
Very
good.
much had that, so that project on the Maori accents, and it was really silly. Yeah,
Yeah. I love that, like, really sort of innocent type of humor, where somebody takes everything at sort of face value. I think it's so funny. It's kind of similar to like Drax.
yeah, oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So anyway, so they have their battle between Hulk and Thor, and that was really fun. And the Grandmaster, Jeff Goldblum, hello,
Just
was so
Goldblum.
fun.
Oh, yep. Yeah, Goldblum and everywhere.
It was so good. It was hilarious.
Oh, he was great.
Yeah.
And he was the right person for it too. He's very much of that Goldblum wackiness to it.
Yeah. And then they battle it out, and they both like manage to sort of not die, which is good. And and he ends up being able to escape. I mean, if I was going to nitpick, I feel like that time there maybe was a little too long between that part where they're in the it's Thor and Hulk and Valkyrie, and there's a lot of, but I enjoyed it, but maybe it was just a tad too long. But they end up getting to the ship, and they end up being able to escape, and that's sort of a long sequence, and they end up making it back to Asgard. And at this point, Hela's had a ton of destruction, and Thor has been able to use
The hammer.
Oh yeah, we forgot to talk about that. So Thor loses his hammer. That was pretty big.
Yeah, that was pretty big. Yeah, it's one of those things that very much sort of it's the end of a trilogy kind of revelation there, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Do you think he'll get it back in some way, or do you think it's done?
I guess it depends on if Chris Hemsworth needs to do any more movies. But no, I reckon maybe they'll either create his own, and there'll be like a new hammer created, or I remember in the comics at least he had a giant axe, so maybe they'll reintroduce the giant axe.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of armor introduced, which was a lot of fun. It was cool to see Hulk with all this like armor. You never really seen that before, and then see Thor with more, and so maybe he'll do that.
Yeah,
but
I love the helmet that Thor had. It was sort of like Tron, almost like it was slightly Tron-like.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially, and then the way it flicked open.
And I really loved how like Loki never, like, he was consistent with his character. Like, you could never completely trust him, but he wasn't like a total, I feel like sometimes he can be a bit of a wimp. He's supposed to be this incredibly powerful person, but then he rarely shows it. But I felt like he did here more.
Yeah, it was less of Loki the coward. It was more Loki's of the getting up the mischief and sort of playing things to his own advantage.
Yeah.
Very much, yeah.
That scene where they both have the guns and they walk out, I was like, I live for that scene. Oh, like my two favorite. Oh, it was so good. Okay, so what I was going to say was, so he is able to see through Heimdall's eyes at a certain point.
Yeah.
So he knows what's going on in Asgard. And has that happened before and I'm just forgetting?
I can't think of it happening in the movies, no. But maybe it's just one of those things, it's a convenience for the plot kind of deal more than anything.
Sure. So they get back to Asgard, and the rest of the movie is basically them fighting Hela. And I really enjoyed all of that, but I have to say, as a criticism, I really hated that giant dog, whatever.
Oh, really?
I thought it looked terrible. It reminded me of, like, I don't know, it reminded me of Twilight, honestly. I just thought it looked so bad. And the one thing about the Thor movies is they've always looked really, really good. And there were other moments where I thought the CG was a little, but especially that dog. I thought it looked really bad.
Oh, maybe I wasn't looking close enough, but I thought it looked all right.
Run of the mill as far as this sort of fighting between Hela and all of them, but it was very entertaining. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I
Mm-hmm.
liked the fact that Carl Urban's character, Scourge, had that sort of redemption moment as well, which they very much inspired from the comics. He did a very similar thing with the guns and going guns blazing to sacrifice himself.
Which one's that?
Carl Urban's character,
Oh yeah,
Scourge,
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, the executioner.
the executioner, yeah.
Yeah, he was good. And yeah, and then we basically have them escaping and with the rest of the citizens, and the Thor is crowned king. Oh yeah, the end credits. The Grandmaster. That's so funny.
I answered the tie. Call it a tie.
Yeah, call it tie. There's no revolution if you have nothing to, no one to revolt against, or something like that. It was really funny. And I can't even remember.
It was the one where they were on the ship, and then another ship sort of pans down, and then it sort of finishes. So, and you sort of go, uh-oh.
Oh yeah.
And I guess it sort of left so who it actually is. You never know. It could be the Guardians of the Galaxy, or it could be Thanos, or it could be something completely different. Who knows? I guess I'm assuming that's a tie to the Infinity War. It will be.
It must be Guardians of the Galaxy though, because isn't one of the post credits of Guardians of the Galaxy the meeting Thor? Or am I getting confused?
No, I can't remember that. Maybe my memory's
maybe it's hard to keep them all track at this point. There's 17 movies. What are you gonna do? So yeah, I was kind of maybe a little disappointed that Hela had to die, and because I just feel like, except for Loki, all of these Marvel villains are just these one-off kind of characters, and it'd be fun to get a little more development, a little more between. I was really hoping that would be the case with Ultron, that he would be somebody that would be throughout more movies and be kind of similar to Loki, and then it didn't end up being the case. But there really isn't anybody.
Yeah,
I guess Winter Soldier, might count.
I guess something like Ultron, you can always be rebuilt, or a piece survived or something like that. It's one of those things. He always they always destroy him at the end in the comics, and then they always find a way for him to come back, and it's like newly upgraded, or there's and I guess something like Hela, maybe reincarnation could be the way to go with her, or something like that.
So did you have any downsides that you felt about the film?
I couldn't really think of any. I think it was a pretty good film in terms of that. Maybe my fan kind of thing, comic book fan kind of thing, went off a couple of times, and they go, "That's not correct." But I mean, you can't make that shadow your judgment of the film when it's something like nitpicky,
right,
like that. So otherwise, nothing really. It was a pretty good film, and it was very funny, and
it's my favorite comedy of the year by far.
Same.
Yeah, definitely. And so I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I had a few issues where you could definitely I didn't feel like the CG was quite as good as the rest of the Thor movies. And I particularly didn't like that giant dog. But other than that was really my only flaw with the movie. I thought it was very well done, very enjoyable, and I was just entertained, and that's what the movies are supposed to do.
No, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely not someone that's you're not meant to think too deeply with, but it's still very fun. It's like a roller coaster ride, very much just fun, and it's sort of, I really liked how the fact that there was all these elements came together and they mashed up pretty well.
Yeah. Well, and I think we're going to need this movie because we have Black Panther, which I don't know what the tone of that will be, really, but
I think that'll be a much more serious tone.
I would think so, with his dad dying and there's things, and but of course Infinity War is going to be rough.
Yeah, that one is a little concerned about, because I feel like that one is going to be a lot of elements coming together.
Yeah.
And that one, it could stick the landing, but it could crash and burn
I'm
It's
nervous about it. I mean, there's like 35 major characters in this thing. I mean, all the Guardians of the Galaxy, all the characters from Thor and Avengers and Ant-Man and everybody.
yeah,
Like,
it's
it's a
yeah.
lot.
I don't know how it's going to be done, but it's unless the movie's going to be 4 hours long, I don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna be, and I am nervous about Thanos too because I hated Apocalypse, and I feel like those two characters are somewhat similar, and so it just makes me really nervous.
Yeah. But I
Because
guess X-Men Apocalypse was just a terrible movie all over though. That was the problem. I guess
yeah,
it's a matter of they've built up excitement for him. They've you can sort of guess his motivation now,
yeah.
and I guess they can hit the ground running, hopefully, and have
I mean,
something.
I don't think that I can't think of their name all of a sudden, but the directors I can't think of their name, but
The
they
Russo
did.
brothers.
What's it? The Russo, yeah, the Russo.
Yeah.
They haven't made a bad movie yet, so I do trust them, and that
Mm.
they'll do it right. But it's a lot of balls in the air. Doctor Strange, and I don't know, but I hope. I mean, I hope it'll be good. I think it'll at least be entertaining.
Yeah.
But I'm especially the most nervous for Tony. I think that he is. If I were to bet money, that Tony's a goner.
Oh, I think he might be. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think unless they're going to do more Iron Man movies, which
Yeah.
I think he's probably a bit out of the budget now, and it's just yeah. I think
Yeah, I mean, just
we
at the
might
end
hear
of
something else.
Spider-Man: Homecoming, having him all happy and he's getting married, and that's not a good
Mm,
sign.
no, it's like that guy in Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus who on the plane says, "Oh, I'm getting married tomorrow," and then he dies. He gets eaten by the shark.
Yeah,
Something's going to happen like that.
yeah, exactly. So, but then that was pretty funny when he gets Tony's clothes. The Hulk.
That's right. And he keeps adjusting the pants because there's not enough room.
Tony wears tight pants. That made me laugh. That was so funny. Oh, yeah. So anyway, all right, well, great. This was good. I would give this, if you had to give this between like a 1 to 10, what would you rank it?
I'd give it probably I'd give it a 9.
Me too. Me too. I just was so entertained, and I think I'll enjoy rewatching this one because it is. I think it's just so funny, and so it has my favorite actors. So there you go.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of rewatchability of this one.
It doesn't have the emotion that Wonder Woman had, so that's still my favorite of the year. But as far as superhero movies, but this was really good. So, all right. Well, thanks so much for joining me, and we are going to meet up again for Justice League.
But Justice League, that's right.
So that should be fun. It'll be a different, probably tone, but hopefully we'll both really enjoy that. Fingers crossed.
Hopefully, yeah.
I'm optimistic.
Hopefully, I'm optimistic. Hopefully, and the trailers, I'm not quite sure. Aquaman speaks in catchphrases, so I'm a bit concerned about that. How's he meant to support his own movie if he only speaks in catchphrases? I don't know.
I'd say get ready for a lot of orange. That trailer was 90% orange.
Oh yeah, I mean that's Zack Snyder for you though. Very much color grade, a lot of heavy color grading.
Yeah, so it'll be fun to talk about nonetheless. So
yeah, I definitely.
So where can people find you?
So you can find me at howtolovecomics.com. That's a website where we help new readers for comic books, sort of reading recommendations, tips, lists, all helpful information. I answer questions on there too on occasion. So if you want to figure out what Thor comics you want to read, or even Loki or the Hulk, things like that, I can answer those questions, and I've already got some of those answers on the website. Mm-hmm. Also on Twitter at howtolovecomics, on Facebook, on Google Plus if you're really into that, and yeah, you can shoot me an email through the website too.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have links for all that in the description section. Just totally check out his content. It's really, really, really good. And you can now have this podcast on iTunes, which is very exciting. So make sure to check that out and subscribe on iTunes and give us your ratings and reviews. And we'll look forward to Justice League.
Yeah.
And you can find me at Smiling LDS Girl on social media. And like I said, at Rachel's Reviews on YouTube and iTunes. So thanks again. And we will see you all in a couple of weeks.
See ya.